What's up guys and welcome back to Moaning. If you guys are new here, then what is up? My name is Erica. Hey, how you doing? And if you're into the history of the ancient Greeks and the Romans, maybe you're just into the mythology and maybe you've just never seen my face before and you were just like, wonder what she has to say. Well, then this is the perfect place for you. You guys are going to want to hit that subscribe button and the bell icon so that you know every single time I post in the future. But onto the topic of today's video. As you can see from the title, we're going to be discussing Book 6 of Homer's Iliad. So if I could summarize Book 6 into a sentence, it would be that Hector is absolutely adorable with his family to the point where you're probably gonna cry. Like, I think everybody who reads this book, like, we just really see Hector as a family man, and it makes it so heartbreaking knowing his fate and knowing that he's going to die. I'm not ruining the book for you, by the way. I'm not ruining this poem for you if you didn't know he was gonna die. It just means that you've chosen not to know that Hector's gonna die. He is gonna die. That is something that I've said in every single episode. Something that they tell you in the book multiple times. So it's not a secret at this point. But seeing Hector with his family and seeing him as a person rather than just seeing him as a warrior, it makes it so hard. That's why, along with him being a great warrior, that's one of the reasons why people are so Team Hector in this book. Because he's adorable. So why don't we just dive into the story? As per normal, I will walk you guys through all the action, and as you watch, if you have any views of Hector and if they are just like, oh my god, I just love him, then please leave them in the comments below, because we need a little Hector moment, because the rest of the book is actually, we do have another Hector moment, but still, just leave lots of Hector fan comments and I'm gonna be real happy going through them. So let's just dive into the episode, and yeah. So the book opens right where we left off in book 5. If you guys haven't watched that episode, I highly suggest that you do, because once again, it just always helps. If you only have to watch this one for class, you can say some things in regarding this episode, but you won't understand the whole story. So I would advise go watch book 5, because the action opens with more war and it leads off of book 5. So we've got loads of deaths. Okay, the Greeks are just going for it. They're out in the field, they're killing everybody, they're like, hell yeah. I'm not gonna mention all of those because I really do want to focus on Hector in this video. However, I will mention there is one moment. So Menelaus ends up capturing this guy called Adrestus, this Trojan called Adrestus, and he's alive, right? So he captures this guy because the guy was flown? Yes, I was gonna say thrown, but you can say flown, I guess. So he was thrown from his chariot because his horses just kind of went berserk at one point. The chariot ends up throwing him out of it. The whole sort of shebang, he ends up on the floor. The horses run off back to Troy. And so Menelaus ends up standing over him with like his spear out. And he's like, Adrestus, I'm gonna kill you. And Adrestus gets up and he's like, no, wait, please don't kill me. And does this whole supplication moment. So if you guys want to know more about supplication and that whole like ritual, I guess, practice, it's a better word for it, then you guys should be checking out GreekMythComix. She has a great comic explaining that custom, so check it out in the description below. But Adrestus is doing that and he is like begging for his life. Like he's literally hugging onto Menelaus' knees and he's like, please don't kill me. My dad is super rich and if you keep me alive then he'll give you a great prize and all this money and blah 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 for my ransom, so please don't kill me. And Menelaus is just like, actually that sounds pretty good to me. So he's about to hand Adrestus back to his henchman to bring back to the Greek camp. Meanwhile, obviously Menelaus strides over and he's like, the hell do you think you're doing? Absolutely not. He's a Trojan. They all suck. You must kill him. And that's enough for Menelaus to be like, yeah, you're so right. So Agamemnon throws his spear at this guy. It obviously kills him, right? Obviously. So he kills the guy. He then walks over, puts his foot on the guy's chest. I am pointing at my foot, by the way. I now have stuck it out. You guys can't see down below, like here, but this, I'm constantly moving on camera, but either way. So he puts his foot on the guy's chest and pulls out his spear, and it's like a kind of moment. So I just thought that I would mention that because we're here, so why the hell not? After this, out of absolutely nowhere, Nestor pops up, old man Nestor. He pops up and he starts yelling at all the Greeks and he's like, hey, you're all so fussed about getting the plunder and the prizes from all these dead bodies. We need to focus on the bodies first and making sure that, like, you know, we get all of them back into the Greek camps rather than like you just getting gold and like that. So maybe just focus on people rather than things for the moment. And as Nestor is yelling at them, we then switch our action back to the Trojans, where Homer tells us that honestly, they were so scared of the Greeks because the Greeks are just killing all of them, not just Diomedes, all the Greeks killing all the Trojans. And they're so scared that they would have literally run back into Troy and just like retreated from battle if it were not for this guy called Helenos, who I'm like 90% sure I've mentioned or I haven't. He has popped up before. He's Priam's son. He's a really good augur, right? So he is, I said in book 1 and also in the introduction episode that they constantly have to have like a seer with them, somebody who can read signs from the gods. That is Helenos' role in on the Trojan side in this book. So Helenos then goes over to where Aeneas and Hector are standing because they're just having a little chit chat in the middle of war, because like, why wouldn't you? So he goes over to them and he's like, hey guys, look, here's a really good plan. You guys need to like rally up all your troops, get everybody ready. We have to go into battle. But Hector, you need to go back into the walls of Troy. You need to talk to our mother, because they're both sons of Priam. So talk to our mother, talk to all of the ladies of Troy, and get them to make a sacrifice to Athena in the hopes that she'll then be on our side, which like we all know isn't gonna work, but like nice try, Helenos. He gets into a lot of detail there right now, where he tells Hector that he has to tell the women to get this like really extravagant robe and give it to the statue of Athena, but also to have the women sacrifice 12 heifers, to be exact. Has to be 12 of them. So he tells them to go and like do all of that, and he's like, Hector, that's your role, you go and do that. The hope with this is that at least then Athena might be able to put a stop to Diomedes. Bear in mind, he's still a problem, he's still absolutely terrifying, and in fact Homer tells us now that the Trojans had never even feared Achilles as much as they feared Diomedes. That's how terrifying Diomedes is. That's how amazing Diomedes is. This is why he's my favorite character. But that's also what is going into this whole like sacrifice to Athena, is the hopes that maybe Diomedes can be, chilling the fuck out. Maybe the gods will help them. Hector hears this. He's like, yep, sounds like a great plan. He then picks up 2 spears, so he's got one in each hand, and he goes over to the Trojans, like rallies them up. He's like, yeah, let's go into battle. Sends all of them into battle, and literally the Greeks are like, whoa, where did this come from? Like apparently the Trojans are pushing back on them, which gives Hector enough confidence to then go into the walls of Troy and do the whole thing that Helenos just told him to do. Before we get to Hector in Troy though, the narrative cuts to the battlefield, where we see Diomedes come face to face with this Trojan called Glaucus. Now this is a very iconic scene. Whenever I say the sentence at the beginning, by the way, that's always what I took from the book. This is what most people take from the book, is this scene with Glaucus and with Diomedes, because they meet on the battlefield and Diomedes is like, who the are you? I have never seen you before in my life. So who are you that you're brave enough to come and face me? And he says something that's like, unhappy are the men whose sons come to meet me on the battlefield. Like something really cool and epic like that. Clearly, if I can just like remember it off the top of my head. But he says something like that, which even though like, yes, this is a really cool moment and this is a story, I do always think in these moments, like they're standing in the middle of the battlefield. You've got like mini fights happening all around you, and these men have just stopped to be like, who are you? Tell me about who you are. I'm like, now? Now. Either way, they do pick right now. And Glaucus responds and he tells him like literally his entire family line. This thing goes on for like 2 pages of Glaucus explaining who he is and who his family is. And it kind of is like, you know, when you like meet up with someone and you're like, oh my God, like, how are you? And they're like, fine. And well, you hope that they say that, but then in turn they say something like, honestly, it's terrible. And they tell you about like the last like 2 months of their life when like you were just hoping that they would say fine. That's essentially what happens to Diomedes in this moment, that he's like, who are you? And he's just kind of hoping for Glaucus to be like, oh, my dad is this person, when he goes into this whole backstory. And you think, right, based on Diomedes' previous actions, based on the way that he's spoken before, he's probably gonna go, okay, because he normally does that. But he doesn't. Instead, he stops Glaucus and he's like, you are not from that family. Oh my God, stop it. We are so friends. That is so funny. So basically, this guy in my family one time was entertained by that guy in your family. So I guess that now we have to continue that like friendly relationship. How weird. Oh my God, small world. So because of that, because they realize that their families are like friends from a long time ago, they decide to make it official that they are not going to attack each other. And Diomedes says that there's tons of other Greeks for Glaucus to kill, there's tons of other Trojans for him to kill, so they're going to make an agreement that they will not kill each other and they will not fight each other. And they solidify this by exchanging, oh no, what's the word? The thing you cover yourself with. Armor, there we go. Oh, Jesus Christ. So they're going to exchange armor, and that is sort of like their sign of we're not going to fight each other, which we love. Okay, it's well cute, and I love this episode for Diomedes because it really does show him as a human rather than just like this war-hungry man. Like, he's a man of very few words, he's a man of very little emotion, and yet when he sees Glaucus, he immediately is rational. He's just like, oh, okay, cool, like no worries, we won't fight. Because that way, if you ever want to come and visit me in the future after this whole thing blows over, you totally can. We'll go down to the pub. It'll be a fun time. Like, literally, I love it. But after that little episode, now we go to Troy. So now we cut to Hector as he enters Troy, right? So this is happening as Hector is, like, running back to the walls of Troy. So Hector gets into Troy, and all the women just sort of, like, run over to, like, hear what has been going on in the battlefield. They're like, oh my god, Hector's back! And so they're like crowding around him. They're asking about all their sons and their husbands, which obviously he has to deliver some like pretty news, being like, oh, that guy dead. But he does relay the information that Helenos gave him, which is like, hey, you guys should go and like make the sacrifice and do this prayer and blah, blah, blah. So he tells all the women to do that, and then he runs along to Priam's palace. When he gets to Priam's palace, Homer gives us a description that will never not like leave me. He literally describes how there are 50 rooms in like 50 bedrooms, 50 bed chambers, not just rooms, 50 bedrooms in the palace. And in each room is one of Priam's daughters and then her lord, like her like husband. So there are at least 100 people in this house. Like there are at least 50 daughters of Priam, and I will be counting how many sons of Priam we have listed in this book because it's just mental. And actually, let me go and find that line for you guys. Okay, I'm back, but I did hit the camera, so I'm really sorry if the angle just changed, but either way. So the quote is, you guys can go find it around line 240 in book 6, and it literally like just describes how many rooms are in Priam's palace, how many bedrooms, and it gives me mad anxiety to think that this man has that many children, that many daughters, not even just children. Like, what? Totally not the point of this video. I literally didn't have to go up and get my book, but either way. So it's in this palace that he comes into contact with his mother, Hecuba, or Hecate, by the way. Those are two ways that you can write her name. Same person, it just really depends on who you're reading. And Laodike, so remember how I mentioned her previously? Because I mentioned that one of the goddesses took on her form, but she again is highlighted as being like the hardest of Priam's daughters. So she rolls up with Hecuba to Hector, and they're like, hey. Hecuba offers her son some wine, and she's questioning him, like, why did you leave the battlefield and all that sort of shebang. But she gives him this wine, and she's like, that a little bit is for you, but a little bit is for Zeus, give an offering, all that sort of shebang, because it will give you strength in battle when you drink it as well, which, like, peak logic. Like, she's like, this will give you strength, it will help your, like, strategy. Like, wine is just great for battle. I don't know if it is, but also it's just like, I can get behind that mentality with wine. I don't even like wine. Put beer instead of wine and I can get behind that mentality, but regardless. So that's what Hecuba does, and Hector's like, no, for multiple reasons. He says, one, if I drink that and then go into battle, it won't actually help me with my strength, it will make me weaker, and it will also make my strategy worse, which, like, it will, but also I'm like, Hector, live a little. And the second reason why he says no is because he's covered in blood. He's literally covered in dirt and blood, and he's like, if I were to even try, even attempt an offering to Zeus, then like he would just take it as an insult because I do not look appropriate to give a sacrifice. So I'm gonna say no. He instead relays once again this whole plea from Helenos to Hecuba and to Laodike, and is like, hey, can you please go and make this offering to Athena? We need help with the whole Diomedes situation. So if you could go and do that, offer up all of the heifers, all of that sort of shebang, bring a nice robe, that would be great. And so whilst you do that, I'm gonna go and like find Paris. Because bear in mind, Paris has still not come back out into battle since book 3. We haven't seen him. He's just been hanging out with Helen the whole time. So Hector's like, all right, I have to go and like find my brother and see him being an idiot and tell him off. So that's where Hector goes, and then Hecuba and Laodike go to make the sacrifice thing. What's funny about this whole sacrifice is actually that Hecuba ends up going into this whole like vault that they have in Troy of all of these really lovely robes, which she can then offer to Athena. And so she goes down there, and Homer notes that it's actually among all the that Paris stole from Sparta when he picked up Helen. And so you're reading it and you're like, oh, I don't know if this is going to go very well. But she ends up bringing that to the temple of Athena. She gives it as an offering. They all pray, they wail, they lament, they do all this sort of shebang. And then obviously Athena doesn't hear it. We have to hear it 3 times. This is like the 3rd time that we've heard this whole plea that the Trojans have to the gods. But Athena can just choose to ignore it, which she does, obviously, because she loves Diomedes. Back to Hector though, and he walks into Paris's house holding his spear, which I always thought was weird. Why doesn't he like leave it at the door? I feel like it's very aggressive to walk into this man's house holding his spear, but either way. He goes in and he finds Paris like fiddling with all of his armor. Helen's in the corner, Paris is putting on all of his stuff, and Hector walks in and he's pissed, right? He sees literally Paris half dressed, and he sees Helen doing absolutely fuck all in the corner, and he's like, wait, what? Like, what have you been doing? Son, there are people on the battlefield dying for you, and you're in here looking at yourself in the mirror? What? Paris, again, takes us like a champ. I have said this, and I will constantly give Paris credit where it's due, and it's always that he never gets mad at other people when they get mad at him, because everybody's mad at him all the time. So Hector yells at him, and then Paris like literally looks at him and goes, yeah, okay, I totally understand why you told me off. I'm just getting all of my like war stuff on, I'm getting all of my armor on. Actually, it's funny that you came in now because Helen was just like whispering soft words into my ear to convince me to go back to battle. When has this woman ever done that? Like, literally, there's no indication in this book, in any of the translations of this book, that she has ever whispered anything softly to Paris, apart from possibly, I wish you were dead. I believe that. Paris's weird distortion of reality is hilarious. He then says to Hector, go on and do what you have to do. I'm gonna put this on really quickly, and then I'm gonna run down to the battlefield and I'll be there before you get there. So I'm just gonna finish this off, run down there, and then we can chat on the battlefield. Hector doesn't initially reply. It's actually Helen that cuts in now, and she's just like, wow, I wish I was never born, or I wish I was dead, because she's like, well, if I was never born, then none of this would have happened, but if I had to have been born, then I wish that like the sea would have carried me out, and I wish that like I wasn't alive at this moment because I've caused so many problems. She highlights how Hector has literally been doing all of Paris's dirty work for him. She's like, you've been doing so much for this idiot over here. You should come and sit down, come and have a rest. I'm so sorry for causing all of this. And she literally says that if I had to have been alive in this moment, I wish that I was actually married to a better man than Paris. Like, I don't know why no one talks about how savage Helen is. Like, she says to Hector, you know, you're the reason why we're going to be sung about in like future poems. You're the reason. It's not because of Paris, not because of me, it's because of you that this story is going to be so famous. Which, by the way, hello, the Iliad, that's exactly what happened. So she literally is saying all this stuff, no one has ever mentioned it, and Hector is then just like, well, I can't sit down because I actually have to go and see Andromache, who's his wife. So he's like, I have to go and see my wife, I have to go and talk to her, I want to see my son, but thanks for the offer. And as he walks away, he turns around and he's like, by the way, Helen, can you please make sure that my idiot brother is actually on the battlefield before me, because like we really need to like step up our game. And Helen's like, cool, yeah, no problem. Hector leaves to go home now to go and find Andromache, and when he gets home, she's not there, and he's like, what the hell? And all of the servants and maidens there, they tell him that she is now close to the tower on the wall with another maiden, with their son. So he then runs along and he goes to find her there. When he gets to the wall, the first description that we have of his family is actually of his son, Scamandrios. So Homer describes Scamandrios as being like a cute shining star, and you're like, oh no, this is not gonna end well, because we know that Hector has to die and he has to leave behind this cute son, and I just, ah. And immediately Andromache, his wife, reaches out to hold on to Hector's hand, and she starts crying. It's so heartbreaking. Before she even says anything, she's just crying. She then says through all of these tears that it's actually Hector's strength, his own strength, that will be his downfall. And she says that he's not even worried about her, he's not worried about their son, he doesn't care how any of this is going to affect them as a family. And she even highlights how she has nothing left but him. Like, Hector is her whole world. She has no mother, she has no father, they were both killed, and actually Achilles killed her 7 brothers as well. And so she literally has nothing left. Like, she only has Hector. And so she says to him, if you die, I die with you. Like, there's no reason for me to exist without you. Hector's reply is equally as sad, because he's like, I can't stop fighting just for you. Like, there are bigger things at stake here than just my family. But he, oh my God, you guys, you just have to read it. Like, I can't do it justice, because he goes into this speech about saying that he's not actually worried about Troy. He knows that Troy is going to fall. He's not worried about Troy. He is not worried about his father. He's not worried about his mother. The only thing he cares about is Andromache and his son. And he's really worried about what will happen to especially Andromache, because with war comes, you know, like war slaves, and that's what Andromache will be. And so he says that he's really terrified that she's going to be taken away to a place like Argos, and in a couple of years she'll be like a wine steward or something. And these people will be laughing at her, saying, at one point this was the wife of great Hector, ha ha ha. Like, that's what he's most worried about, and he hopes that he will be dead before he ever sees that, or ever hears anything like that happening. He then reaches out for his son, who the handmaid is holding, and because the boy is so scared, he sort of like shrivels back into the handmaid and he starts like crying, and Hector just laughs because he still has his war helmet on. So he takes off his war helmet, and then he reaches again for his son, and his son is like, oh wait, I actually totally know that man. And so he then there's this scene with Hector when he's like holding on to the baby, and then he starts like throwing the baby up in the air, and it's just like the cutest moment. They're both giggling, there's so much love there. And Hector prays in this moment to Zeus, and he says, I hope that my son will be better than me. I hope that people one day will look at my son reigning over a city and will say he's way better than his father was. And it is just the cutest thing in the entire world, mainly because you know this man is gonna die, and it's just like he's leaving behind his family. And as he gives Scamandrios back to his wife, Andromache is still crying. She's like bawling her eyes out. And Hector's like, please don't be sad. Like, if I'm fated to die, then I'm fated to die. But I don't think I'm fated to die soon. So you guys are okay. Like, please stop crying. He's trying to be comforting, but like, it's not really all that comforting being like, it might happen soon. Just like not today. So obviously Andromache is she is like distraught at this moment. And so Andromache and her handmaiden go to leave. And as they're leaving, then Andromache turns around like one more time to just like see Hector a last time, and then goes back into her home, where her and the handmaidens and the rest of the servants, they all start like lamenting Hector as if he was dead, even though he's still alive. So they're like beating their breast and they're crying and the whole, oh my god, it's heartbreaking. Luckily, Homer doesn't end the book this way, because I think we would all just be crying our eyes out, like thinking of what's to come of Hector after seeing this scene. Thankfully, he doesn't end it this way. And in fact, Hector then leaves the house, right? He puts his helmet back on, leaves the house. He's waiting outside his home, and Paris sort of runs by and he's like, oh my god, I'm so sorry I'm late. I know that like I just told you that I would be down there before you, but like I got caught up. I'm so sorry. Hector could yell at him in this moment, but Hector doesn't. He actually just looks at him and he says, look man, you're actually a really good fighter. It's just that you never fight. And more importantly, I'm sick to death of hearing people slate you and having to stick up for you when you haven't shown them why they should be sticking up for you. The last couple of lines of the book are Hector saying, these men are fighting for you. You need to remember that. And so we need to go out there right now and make things right with the gods. And hopefully at some point in the future, we can amend this relationship. And so they leave to go back into battle. And that is the end of book 6. Woo! I'm so glad we made it this far. So if you guys enjoyed that, if that was actually kind of helpful, then please hit that like button below. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because I am only on book 6. There are still, oh god, that's maths. 18 more books left. Right. 18 more books. That's how long Achilles' strop is. Anyways, so thank you guys so much for tuning into this video, and we'll be seeing you on Thursday with book 7 of Homer's Iliad. So I'll see you then.